I grew up near the woods. Everyone did, in my town. There was no avoiding them. They pressed up against the backs of houses, crept along the edges of roads, and swallowed old trails whole as if they had never been meant for people in the first place. The trees were tall and packed tightly together, the kind that swallows sound and light so completely that time itself feels unreliable once you're inside. People call them the Whispering Woods, not because they were haunted, because they were never truly quiet. When I was a kid, the adults insisted it was nothing more than wind, leaves brushing together, branches shifting, the forest breathing the way any living thing does if you listen long enough. But even then, we knew better. Wind doesn't sound like it knows your name. The first time I heard it clearly, I was 16. I'd wandered farther than I should have, following an old deer trail that twisted deeper into the trees the way paths tend to do when no one is watching them anymore. The air was cold and damp, thick with that metallic forest smell, wet bark, rot, and something sweet beneath it that felt wrong in a way I couldn't quite explain. That was when the whispering began. It wasn't loud or dramatic, the way you'd expect something supernatural to be. It was just close, like someone standing just behind your shoulder, careful enough not to be noticed unless you were already listening for them. I stopped walking. The woods didn't. I remember how unnaturally quiet my body became, as if it had decided on its own that stillness was safer. My breathing slowed, shallow and controlled, and my ears rang the way they do when something important is about to happen and your senses don't want to miss it. That was when I understood what made the sound so unsettling. It wasn't coming from a single place. It was coming from everywhere except where I was looking. I turned slowly, scanning the trees one by one, my eyes tracing the dark gaps between trunks. The whispers shifted with me, always just out of view, always behind me. At first, I didn't hear words, only the vague shape of them. Almost language, but not quite, like overhearing a conversation through a wall that's just thick enough to muffle meaning. Then suddenly and unmistakably, I heard my own voice. It wasn't shouting. It wasn't frightened. It was calm, speaking from somewhere deeper in the woods than I'd gone. I ran. Branches tore at my jacket, and roots hooked my feet as I stumbled forward, the ground dipping and rising unpredictably beneath me, as if the forest were trying to trip me without ever laying a hand on me. The whispers followed. They weren't chasing me. They were matching my pace. I burst out of the tree line and didn't stop until I hit the road, lungs burning and legs shaking so badly I had to sit down on the gravel to keep from collapsing. Behind me, the woods went quiet. Too quiet. The kind of quiet that feels deliberate, like something has decided to listen instead. I never told anyone what I heard that day. Not my parents, not my friends. Still, I noticed something afterward, something small but persistent. When I looked in mirrors, my reflection felt slower. Not slow enough to prove anything, just slow enough to make my stomach tighten when I thought about it too long. Years passed. People moved away. Others disappeared into ordinary lives filled with jobs, families, and reasons not to look back. The woods, however, never changed. Then last fall, they found Mrs. Leary. She lived alone at the edge of the forest, and everyone in town knew her. She was sharp-tongued and impatient, the sort of woman who complained about everything and never apologized for it. She snapped at kids who stepped on her lawn, slammed doors when she was annoyed, and corrected people mid-sentence without a hint of embarrassment. She was not a gentle person. That's why it unsettled everyone when the searchers said they found her walking barefoot between the trees. Calm, smiling. No one knew what to make of that. There were no injuries, no signs of a struggle, just one detail no one could explain. Every reflective surface in her house had been covered. Mirrors, windows, even the microwave door, papered over and taped shut, as if she'd been trying to make sure nothing could look back at her. The funeral was awkward, too quiet, too small. People didn't know how to talk about her. Compliments felt dishonest, but silence felt rude, so conversations started and died almost immediately. I stood near the back, facing the tree line. At one point I blinked, and for just a moment I thought I saw her standing there, half hidden among the trees, upright and watching, her expression flat and unsmiling. When I looked again, there was nothing, only branches, shadow, and the wind moving the way it always had. I told myself it was grief. The night after the funeral, I dreamed of the woods. This time I wasn't running. I was standing perfectly still, listening. The whispers weren't behind me anymore. They were in front of me, and they kept repeating the same thing over and over, patiently, as if practicing. Turn around. I woke up in my bed before sunrise. The house was silent, normal, safe, exactly the way it should have been. For a moment I couldn't remember what I'd been afraid of. That frightened me more than the dream itself. I stood in front of the mirror and waited for the unease to fade. Everything looked right. My face, my eyes, the familiar tired lines I'd learned to recognize over the years. And yet I felt watched. Not the way you feel when someone is standing behind you, but the way you feel when something is checking its work. I searched my reflection for whatever felt wrong, but I couldn't find it. Nothing was missing. Nothing moved strangely. There was only the lingering sense that something important had already happened. Like I used to belong somewhere else first. I turned away before that thought could settle in. I don't go back to the whispering woods anymore. I don't think they took everything. Just enough that I can no longer be certain what was mine to begin with.